Yep.
And then maybe it's just because of the location being right downtown, it gets more attention because it's potentially can back up.
Another one.
Yep.
I myself had to go all the way around to Grizzly to come back to park my home because I couldn't get through with 2 trucks there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a number of streets down, especially in the older neighborhoods like that.
Smaller roads.
Right, smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the two-way traffic, I know there was turns out to be it was a small kitchen fire on one of the houses on the other side of the street, and it was difficult with cars coming down the road to get equipment up when it was needed. And that's, again, we're not looking to try to make it difficult for anybody living there, and we certainly understand your plight of that long, deep driveway, but we need to come up with a solution that we know that street will have passability. And you're right, there's other places too, but for some reason, Forest Place gets more attention, maybe because it's right downtown, and gets more traffic than a lot of the other streets that have the difficulty. I know my end of Cushing Street is very difficult at times, but there's only a handful of cars an hour, where Forest Place is a pretty heavy traffic one, and that's why it's making it difficult for us to find an answer for that street.
Well, now
I
that
have to agree that there is congestion at times. You do have to wait, but I just feel that it's not that much of a problem, but what common courtesy of driving dictates that you wait for one vehicle to get through.
Yeah.
You duck into one of the driveways.
Unless it's, unless it's an emergency, and
Right.
it does seem to be more difficult. But you and I had talked too, that the permit, especially for you in the winter, there's been permits given before for your ability to park off the street, in your front, and or, like we said, loading and unloading of groceries and things like that. So, but some of these other suggestions I think are worth looking into before we make a decision.
Oh, yeah. And if anybody else in your neighborhood that could either write us letters or send us anything with their information or come to the next meeting,
So
or
I could, okay.
that would be great before,
Yeah.
when is this got to be?
Well,
There's no set time.
There's no set time, and
Okay.
we don't have a deadline. It's not a public, local
Right.
law that we have, have to have the public hearing and then we're gonna pass it. We're looking for answers on this one.
Right.
This is not something that we know what we need to do. We just know that there's heavy congestion in that area because it's right downtown, right off of Route 20, and we want to make sure we find the right answer.
And make it safe for people, so that's our biggest
I
concerns.
would hope you
If-
look into it further
Oh, yeah.
in the months to come.
And if neighbors have some ideas, they don't need to be here, they can put them in writing and send them to us. And we really want as much input on this because we don't know the answer. And we have kicked it around now for better than a year trying to come up with a solution, and we don't know what it is.
Mhm.
And I'm just afraid that leaving it unchanged is going to create a bigger problem in the future for us.
And we can see it moving down, it's going to be moving down, and there's going to have to be decisions made about some of those other streets too.
Oh, sure.
Will we be notified before a vote or
Oh, yeah.
definite decisions made?
That'll be put in the
We know
paper.
that there's going to be an
Published.
increase in population at the college next year, another 200 to 250 kids
Mhm.
coming in, and so we've got to make some decisions about these little streets as it gets more and more crowded and everybody got a car.
And I'm sure we'll give you a notice after we get done hearing from the people from Ryan. We'll make sure that in
Yes.
the future there will be notice on these things to our neighbors. Anyone else on Forest Place?
Yep, Mr. Pedica, go ahead.
I have a quick little map here for you. I'm Joyce's neighbor,
Yes, you are.
and this map shows parking as it was and as it is. The yellow line is as it was. Joyce alluded to a time when there was no parking. When I first moved on that street 28 or 29 years ago, parking was restricted to where that pink line is. Where the yellow line is, it was, I
Vacant.
think, allowed up until a certain time of the night, as you alluded to.
Right, 9
earlier.
o'clock.
So that solved part of the problem, but I have to acknowledge that your concerns are well-founded. It is a severe problem. Just to give you an example, I was shoveling around, snow blowing my driveway and the sidewalk, shoveling around the hydrant. I was looking up the street. There was a car that had apparently parked illegally overnight. It was ticketed. It was during a really snowy evening. The plows had to go around it, and it created such a narrow pass on Forest Place. I remember thinking, if there was an emergency, they would have had to take a really secure, what's that word? Somebody heard it. A difficult word to get.
Yeah.
There they're a block away from my house, they would probably have to travel 3 or 4 blocks to get there.
Yeah.
That's maybe a worst-case scenario, but even under normal circumstances, I can tell you the times when I was coming down Forest from Main Street, and I had to pull into the parking lot behind Medicourt
Get
just to
around.
get out of the way of oncoming cars.
Yep.
That's happened with some regularity. I don't know if I'm for a complete ban. I think there would be solutions like perhaps timed parking, and I know the meters, but something that would say parking for, an hour, 2 hours, or whatever, or limiting it so that those cars would be going during the evening hours, but still you'd still have some difficulty during the day, particularly in the worst weather.
What do you think
It's been a
about
problem.
one-way?
What do you think about a one-way?
What direction would the one-way?
Going
Off of Main.
off of Main.
So Main, you'd be able to travel from Main down Forest, but not from
Forest
my house
out.
up to Main.
Yeah.
Where it's a tough corner there to pull out
How
to.
would you stop the traffic from going up to Main Street?
I suppose, with one-way signs?
One ways and do not enters.
Tax, tasers, but
Yeah.
you got a
Speed
variety of
I would have to
hours.
think about
Spikes,
that.
spikes.
I would have to think
We
about
don't,
that.
Or
I think
the other
because
way.
it allows traffic to get off of Main Street, but it doesn't dump you onto Main Street, which is often a difficult spot to see getting out on Main Street also.
With the cars parked
Yes, it
there.
is.
You know, it is. So the
Especially
big-
if there's a beer delivery truck.
Yeah.
That's
right.
double
too,
parked.
Yeah.
Again, from my house, Lower
The beer
Cottage,
delivery?
from Lambert to Central, there's no parking on the south side of the street. And then from 9 AM to 5 PM, there's no parking money through Brent.
Yeah.
That could be helpful, but it's a real problem. There are
Yep.
people that I've seen drive
On the lawns.
from Barker Street to make that corner to go up to Main. They encounter a car right in front of my house that's parked legally. And the only way they can get out of the way of the car coming from Main is to get right up to the bumper of that car that's parked. Now, in order to get back into the lane where they have to travel, they have to back up.
Yeah.
It just becomes an absolute
Hazard.
disaster. And a quick story, and you gotta promise me there's a statute of limitations on it. But no parking from here to corner sign disappeared once.
Ah,
It ended up in my backyard. Sometimes we get pedestrian traffic at night, I'm sure you can imagine. Ended up in the backyard, so I decided that the no parking zone was gonna be a little bit bigger, and I put the sign a little closer to Main Street, but it was either the police or Chico. Oh, they knew where the sign was.
Was supposed to be,
Moved
yeah.
again. But it's been a problem for years. I complained to a prior administration, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before that. They had policemen watching the corner, watching the traffic, and nothing was ever done. I don't know if they decided it wasn't enough of a problem. It's a real problem.
it's gonna get worse.
It's gonna get
I think
worse.
part of it is not that it's not a problem, but not knowing what to do to solve it, and that's why we're here.
At least the
Yeah.
best way, so far.
Right.
That'll work both with people coming and going. and
The one-way traffic, for some reason, that just does not strike me as being the best solution, but.
Well, I do like the idea where you've only got the parking in front of 3 houses, where if somebody has to wait for a vehicle that's in there to get out of the way and pull up so they can get around it,
Yeah.
you're not having a line of 9 cars that you have to wait at the intersection for somebody to come all the way through or find a driveway to shoot into. So that might be a way of addressing, going back to where they were 20 years ago. Maybe some look, I don't know, we didn't have that on the table before.
So the yellow is no parking?
Yellow is where they increased it to,
And so 20 years ago, there would have been no parking where the yellow is, correct?
No,
I'm
pink.
telling you wrong, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The pink is where they increased it to.
They took
This
it
became-
back, okay.
They made it 40% more
Longer.
parking on Forest Place.
Made it longer.
Basically, which made it just 40% more miserable to navigate. And that happened since.
Oh,
I've
the
been there.
park, I gotcha, okay.
Give me
Yeah.
another copy.
But what would be nice is you'd be able to, be able to make that turn at least. Because that's what you can't
take
do
it back up
now.
here.
Can't
with
turn off.
Yeah, when we have an ambulance or something, we can't turn on to that with the parking.
It's too tight.
We just can't, make that turn. We can't with a fire truck, I think, in any case, can we?
Coming off of Barker.
We can't
on
turn
Forest.
onto that road with a fire truck in any case.
Go down to Forest Place,
Yeah.
Main Street?
We
From
can?
Barker. From Barker.
From Barker.